different looks. Jalen Hurts will, in fact, provide a spark, but I have said this all along. I don't need a spark. I need to be set ablaze. I need the Eagles' offense to be on fire. This is what we do not realize when we are so infatuated with new things and we are infatuated with limited excitement. We don't realize that we're changing some of our approach, which enhances the excitement as well. What do I mean? Head coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, Doug Peterson, he said, hey, we're going to come out and really try to establish the run this week. Why don't you do that with Carson Wentz? Miles Sanders is third in the NFL in yards per carry, but he's 20th in the NFL in rushing attempts. So now, Doug Peterson, you're going to do what would have benefited Carson Wentz because you now have Jalen Hurts. Again, Marcellus, I brought up this relationship example with Carson Wentz being replaced by Jalen Hurts because it is legitimate. When you go on a date with somebody for the first time, surely the conversation will be special. You don't know their favorite color. You don't know what they do for a living. You don't know what their parents do. You can talk about any and everything. So yes, when the Eagles look at Jalen Hurts for the first time, the first series, the first two series, I assume it will be special. The Eagles haven't seen and the Saints haven't seen anything like Jalen Hurts thus far. However, I'm looking for a spark to set ablaze. I'm not looking for a spark just for spark's sake.
Oh, wow. I think Jalen Hurts is going to do well in this situation, provide a spark that will lead to a blaze. Interesting you keep saying that, but at the same time, before you run, you got to learn to walk. And I think this is a situation where I'm going to be okay with the fundamental level of what Jalen Hurts will present to this team. Just in their imagination, just in their expectations, everything has been reset. Think about it. They're on a 4-game losing streak where they haven't scored more than 17 points a game. Guess what? Jalen Hurts can walk out there, play a part of this complementary football and establish the running game, use his mobility as an asset, throw the football. He's been out there in terms of yards per attempt, 9.1 yards an attempt on Sunday. That's something Carson Wentz hasn't done in 2 years. So Jalen Hurts, just by his presence, is going to be a spark that sets the blaze with everyone else on the team because they will become contagious. I've been through quarterback controversies before with Doug Flutie and Rob Johnson. Now think about that. We were an 0-3 team. All of a sudden, we just switched the quarterback. We couldn't lose a game, it felt like. We ended up 10-6 and make the playoffs. So I'm looking at this situation as a mirror image, as a parallel to it. But I'm looking at the Eagles as a whole, as they just need this infusion of enthusiasm. Sometimes that's all it takes, Acho. Mind over matter. I understand we're all big, we're all fast, we're all strong, we all are in tune with our scheme and trying to do our best. But sometimes you just need that wake-up call or that change that can spark everyone else to play better than they've been playing to this point. We got to bring in somebody who knows a thing or two about this. Fox NFL analyst Bucky Brooks. Bucky, you expect Jalen Hurts to provide a spark against the Saints?
Oh, absolutely. He's going to set the house on fire. And he's going to set it on fire because I think this is the perfect opportunity for the Eagles to reset. Now, Acho can laugh because we sat there and watched that Hart garbage for about 12 weeks, and finally we can dispose of it. But now we got a real quarterback coming to the game that will allow Doug Peterson to expand his mind and his playbook. Because I want you to go all the way back to the draft. And shortly after Jalen Hurts was drafted, Howie Roseman talked about, we want to be a quarterback factory. We want to produce quarterbacks because, in a way, he felt like they had the Midas touch because they had taken Carson Wentz and he went from #2 overall pick to playing at a level that was considered to be MVP level. Then you had Nick Foles, who went from a journeyman backup to being the Super Bowl MVP. So they thought that they had the secret sauce to be able to get any quarterback up and going. So when I look at Jalen Hurts, I think it's important to remember, Doug Peterson said, we want to be able to do some of these Taysom Hill-like things. Well, I'm glad he brought that up because when I look at Taysom Hill, when Taysom Hill was coming out of BYU, he wasn't known for his passing prowess. He was known for his running ability. He ran for 2,800 yards at BYU. You know how many yards Jalen Hurts ran for in 3 years? Oh, he ran for 3,200. He's a more accomplished runner than Taysom Hill. And so when you look at the way the New Orleans Saints play, they're playing complementary football. They're rushing for over 200 yards per. This will encourage Doug Peterson to run the ball because I heard you guys talk about Miles Sanders averaging 5 yards per attempt. Well, now when you have 2 runners in the backfield. It changes the way the defense has to play. I think you will see them lean into the run, and everybody will play better because they're now playing a more conservative style of football that is more conducive to winning.
So I don't necessarily disagree with Bucky Brooks, but that's my problem.
Cool, you shouldn't say
my problem
else.
isn't that I agree.
You shouldn't say anything else.
No. Here's my problem. Because what did you say? Because Bucky said this: the Eagles are going to change their style of play and play a more conservative style of football. If you would have done that with Carson Wentz, then I think results would have been different as well. Now, I'm not going to get into the ifs and buts, where candies, and I'm not going to get into all of that. But what I'm going to get into is this, Bucky Brooks. If you go out there, and you have a spark, right? You don't need a spark unless you're going to go 4-0. And even if you do go 4-0 as the Philadelphia Eagles, you still got to hope the Giants and Washington go 2-2 their last 4 games just to make the playoffs. If you have this spark, even if the spark leads you to 3-1, you better hope the Giants lose 3 more games to make the playoffs. So you all are wishing for a spark. Y'all are hoping for a spark. What I'm trying to tell you is when Nick Foles came in 2018 to replace Carson Wentz, that wasn't a spark. Nick Foles lit that offense on fire. He lit that team on fire. Eagles were 5-6. Foles went 4-1 down the stretch. Eagles went 9-7, made the playoffs. That wasn't a spark. My problem with all of this Jalen Hurts conversation and communication is a spark. A spark. A spark. The Eagles don't need a spark. They need a miracle. Carson Wentz has shown he can provide a miracle last year. 5-7, 4-0 down the stretch, 9-7, playoffs. But a spark in and of itself, fellas, that is not enough.
Man, you over there trying to marry that word spark like that's his limit. That's just what the expectation is because they don't want to put too much pressure on a youngster in his first full-time start. Stop trying to get us all lost in that conjecture right there. A spark can burn down an entire forest. Just a little spark. Acres and acres of trees gone. How did it start? It was a spark. That's how this can happen, too, when you talk about Philadelphia. And let's talk about the spark that's necessary. You keep talking about this forest fire and this blaze. Carson Wentz in his 4-game losing streak, 55% completion percentage. Can Jalen Hurts play better than that? How about 4-3 touchdown to interceptions? Can Jalen Hurts do that? What about being sacked 18 times? Can Jalen Hurts cut that down some? What about passer rating at 72? Pedestrian. Can Jalen Hurts do more than that? Absolutely. And it's set up perfectly for him. Going against the Saints defense, number 2 defense in the NFL. What could be more rewarding if you go out there and see a team that's coming with the number 2 defense and a 9-game winning streak and all the conversation of they can't be beat with their starter or their backup. And then Jalen Hurts goes out there and says, well, let me get a try at it. Let me just try to provide a spark and let everyone else around me ignite and start this inferno. That's how I'm looking at this situation. And Doug Peterson knows this because Doug Peterson is throwing a Hail Mary as well. He realizes that they're married financially to Carson Wentz, but he's come to the realization that, hey, I may lose the locker room. You know what? I may lose a guy or two in terms of my choice of going with Jalen Hurts over Carson Wentz. But I'm not going to lose my job without a fight. And the fight that Doug Peterson has in him is putting Jalen Hurts out there to fight for him and the rest of the team.
You know, it's funny because I don't know if Acho is a guy that gets in the kitchen. I heard him talk about that bad meal that he had with the Aunt Jemima syrup on the carrots or whatever.
That's
but
terrible.
I fancy myself as a grill master there, Acho. And so when you talk about a spark, sometimes you got to light the grill with a spark. I don't know what kind of grill you have, if you can cook or not, but you got to light it up. And so you light it up so you can get the meat going. Right now, the Philadelphia Eagles haven't been able to cook in so long because the grill master that they had in Carson Wentz, he keeps dropping the meat on the ground. He's turning the ball over. He has sacks for days. They just don't make it happen. And so the good thing, though, is he has done this. He has done this before. Doug Peterson has had to go to the bullpen numerous times to rescue what Carson Wentz has done. He's either been hurt, he's been unavailable, so he had to turn to Nick Foles. And when he turned to Nick Foles, he found a way to get him right because he dug in the crates, he found back pages of the playbook and got it done. So now here he is again, having to dig in the back pages of the playbook to try and save their offense because the starting quarterback can't get it done. So yes, we will get a chance to see Jalen Hurts and all.
you.